Today, I have the privilege of interviewing Kristen Seagren. She and her husband, Frank, are longtime members of our Northgate Orangetheory studio. And she is a clinical supervisor and therapist by day. And something you might not know about her is she used to be morbidly obese. And she talks to us about her weight loss journey, how she lost the weight, why she lost the weight. And I've never known Kristen this way. And you probably would be amazed if you saw her now because she's such a strong, fun, amazing lady. And she takes us all on her journey, which I love to hear. So welcome to the show, Kristen. Who's the person you're being? Are you satisfied? Welcome to Be the Person, a podcast for the brave and the curious, for people ready to explore their true potential. I'm your host, Annie Randall. Join me and let's get ready to go on this journey together. Welcome to Be the Person podcast. I cannot wait for you to hear the story from Kristen Seagren. She is one of our OTF members, one of my very favorites and has been for years. Welcome, Kristen, to the show.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and having me here.
Yeah, I would love to just start out. Let's start out with you today. What does that look like? And then we're going to go back in time.
Okay. So my name is Kristen Seagren. I am a clinical social worker. I am a clinical supervisor over at an outpatient clinic. So I do mental health therapy. I work with mainly kids and geriatrics. I am married to my amazing, incredible high school sweethearts. And I am an empty nester, which is really exciting. So I'm in a totally new phase of my life. And that pretty much sums up me.
Love it. Well, I think if people didn't know the past history, they would never look at you and think at one time you were morbidly obese. I know when you told me that, I was really surprised because the only person I know looks very fit and has always been active because I've known you when you joined Northgate originally. But can you take us back and just tell us a little bit about your past and then how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. Well, Frank and I have been blessed with three beautiful daughters. And when we had our first, I think it was my fourth month of pregnancy, I got put on bed rest. And with that came a lot of rest, obviously, no exercise. I was told, lay down, don't do anything. Whatever you do, don't increase your heart rate. And, I was terrified as a new mom. I didn't know what I was doing. And so, um, months and months of bed rest led to our first one. And then, when she was just a little after her first birthday, we had decided to try for another baby. And we're very blessed right away with our middle one and had some complications there as well, where I got put on bed rest again. And as you can imagine, it just became this slow, gradual weight gain. And and then it just kind of it's funny to look back because I don't even remember. It just seemed natural at the time. I guess I didn't really recognize how I had let my health go because I was in my early 20s and I was in a happy marriage and Frank was such a wonderful, amazing husband who never made me feel any different than absolutely gorgeous and amazing. And so I just packed on all these pounds with these babies. And then shortly after our second one was a little bit a year old, I think she was about, yeah, maybe 26 months. We had our third. So three babies in 4 years. And with that just came a lot of unintentional weight gain. I never really had time or took time to intentionally get back on top of my health because honestly, it wasn't a priority for me. Being a mom was a priority for me. And I stayed home with my three girls and just took care of them. And we were enjoying life as young 20 couples. We ate lots of pizza. I drank lots of Pepsi. And I think back to that, I'm like, oh, such silly mistakes. But I was just distracted in life and just living every day and loved staying home with my girls. But as active as I was, it was active with toddlers. So you can imagine I wasn't out doing things necessarily for myself. And never really recognized how I really did let my own health spiral out of control a little bit. It's an interesting story of my rock bottom. I don't know if I should go ahead and just go into that.
Yeah, please do.
So we were stationed in Vandenberg Air Force Base. Frank was military, Air Force 22 years. And when we were stationed at Vandenberg, where the girls were born, we had gone down to like Universal Studios or one of the theme parks, right? And having a beautiful day out with the kids. And they had one of the roller coasters that, the ones that are like meant for small children, but parents can ride with their kids. Do you know
Yeah,
which ones I'm talking about?
I do.
Yeah, so I went to get in there with Caitlin, and Frank had the 2 little ones, and they went to close the bar down on me. And I was so large at the time that they really struggled having to push down and almost couldn't close the bar on me. And literally, I can't even tell you, Annie, it was just like, it was like a moment of like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm really big. Like it hit me like I wouldn't have been more shocked if you smacked me out of left field. Just had this realization of like, well, this is not good. This is not healthy. This is not okay. And that was definitely like my rock bottom. And I think for me, at least my opinion is a lot of people have to have that rock bottom to where they really realize there needs to be that immediate change. And there's no negotiation. There's no talking out of anything. It's like, this needs to happen. So we came home that weekend and we, we did not have the funds for a treadmill. I'll be honest. We went out to Sears and opened a credit card and got a treadmill and stuck it in the garage. And I was like, this has to change. And so that's kind of where things started, was that moment for me. Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I think a lot of people listening probably can really relate on it's not like you wake up overnight and you've gained all this weight. It happens slowly. And a lot of times it's because you don't put you first. Like it's out of a good place in your heart. You're putting other people first.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. My girls were my world. My husband was my world. And so like I didn't have the focus of realizing that I'm part of their world. Like that's the piece I think that I had forgotten, which is so easy to do, especially for women, that we prioritize everyone in our lives, above us, and with great intention and love, but also with, oops, forgot, we're part of that. We're part of that importance for our family, you know?
Exactly. But they're
Mhm.
in so many ways because they're watching you for their health journey. Like if you stayed that way, who knows what that would do to your future health. And so I think all of those things definitely play in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So slowly started that walking journey, just walking on the treadmill in the garage because that's pretty much all I was capable of. To be honest, the idea of running was not even, it didn't even enter my mind. Now, mind you, Frank in the military, his nickname was Ultra Fit. He was always the one in charge of PT. He has always been very athletic and a runner. He's just born a runner and
Yeah.
he's incredible at what he does. But that is definitely not me by any means. So he would be very encouraging. And then we had moved on this cul-de-sac at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and there was a woman that moved next door. And have you ever met someone that you just instantly, their soul, like their spirit, just like captures you, and you just want to be connected to them?
Yes. Yes.
Hey,
For sure.
that was Lisa Stern for me. She was like this incredible woman that just had this spirit about her. And we had completely different lives. She was a career woman. She was active duty in the military with her husband. And she had 2 boys, and I had the 3 girls. And I just clung to her. I just knew she was going to be a lifelong friend. And there's these beautiful pathways around Vandenberg Air Force Base, like walking pathways, right? And, in California, pretty much year round good weather. And she started doing after work walks. I would like wait for her as a stay-at-home mom to come home and talk about my day because it was another adult I could connect with outside of Frank. And she would have her work stories and I would have my like whatever I could think of stories to talk about. But we just started doing these walks around in the evening. So I would just eagerly be like a puppy waiting for her and Frank to get home from work most days. But I remember we were walking one night and she said, "Do you see that light post up there?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, do you think we could jog to that?" And I remember thinking, have you lost your mind? Like, look at me. Strap on 120 pounds to that body of yours and let's see if you can jog to that. Like, I was just like, no, but I'm also one of those very, when I'm very competitive and when I'm challenged, I typically do tend to want to just, oh, maybe I can.
Yeah.
and, so- and I mean, it probably was all of maybe 10 yards. It was not very much. It was not very much. But then she started just kind of sprinkling that in our little afternoon walks. And eventually she would, I think it was just she was so passive the way she challenged me, but in a way that she knew would drive me. And so that along with Frank's encouragement was really incredible and instrumental, I think, in getting me comfortable with exercise because for me, I had to find something also that I really enjoyed. I didn't enjoy running. I still to this day struggle with it sometimes, but having someone to talk to and kind of do those challenges, I recognize that fed my energy and my soul. So kind of got me going that way.
Love that. I love that you
Mhm.
had somebody come in your life because honestly, I think that makes such a big difference. One, Frank to encourage you, and then somebody just to come alongside you and do walks and do runs and be that encouraging voice. I just
Yeah.
love that. It's such a good way.
Yes. And Lisa was like, just like Frank, I never felt because I think sometimes as a stay-at-home mom, I felt like I need to be contributing more, I need to be doing more.
Yeah.
And she's a career woman, and I was so impressed by that. But she never made me feel less than, nor did my husband. Just always very like respectful of the work I was doing at home with the girls all day, and never made me feel like, oh, you should really kind of exercise because you're kind of big. Never got any judgment from her. It was pure, truly her wanting to help another woman, another friend. And, like I said, Frank was always telling me how beautiful I was. So I didn't recognize. And he would just, anytime I would make little strides and little mini accomplishments and mini successes, just celebrating those was so important for me. Like, oh my gosh, I ran like this street to that street tonight. Like, that's blowing my mind right now. How did that happen? And I mean, it wasn't, I should probably use the word run. It was more like wog jog. but but little celebrations along the way were really important.
Yeah, so good. You know what? As you're talking, I have a similar friend, and I didn't necessarily have a weight struggle, but I didn't love to run. And I
Mm,
remember our senior year in high school, she's like, "Hey, do you think we can run this far?" And honestly, I'd never even run like a mile before. So
yeah.
running was not my thing. And then we
Mhm,
became really great friends, ran together all through college and for many years after. But I know the importance of that friend. So I love that Lisa was there.
mhm, mhm.
Tell me about so you start the exercise journey. What about food? Did you change your food at this point or not yet?
Yes, and I tried. I mean, of course, I dove into full disclosure, I dove into, like, what are the appetite suppressants? What kind of diet plans can I do? I think my dad had done, do you remember Jenny Craig back in the day? I don't even know if that's still a thing.
Yeah.
He had done that, and so I was like, well, we couldn't afford that at the time. I was like, absolutely not. So I tried a few of those things. They would work temporarily as they do. That's why as the big pharma with medications, there's a reason it's a multi-billion dollar industry, right? And I tried all these little fast ways, and it would maybe work for a little bit and then would not. And then Frank was like, I remember he started making smoothies at like homemade smoothies, just like with yogurts and things. And we were like, maybe we could cut out like the Pepsi, because I would drink Pepsi and milk. Like, I would drink a ton of milk, like obscene amount of milk. And so we slowly started like, oh, maybe we'll just do pizza one night a week instead of like four,
Yeah.
and take out the soda. And then he would make me a smoothie for like my lunch, and I would try to drink that. And oh my gosh, water! I'm supposed to be drinking water. Like, again, just the silliest, smallest, simplest things, but to me it was profound because I hadn't done that. It wasn't my natural day to day. And so with that, slowly it started to impact. And then I would recognize, oh my gosh, I do remember the first time I hit a 20-pound loss. And I was like, that's 20 pounds. Oh my goodness. And like, well, then it became again that competition piece of myself to like, well, if I did that, what if I even embraced more healthy foods and more portion control? Um, uh, and to be honest, I come from a family of addiction. And I knew that I had that likelihood. And I was very fortunate never to get into to drugs or alcohol heavy. But for me, it was the food addiction. So I had to really come to terms with, okay, when I'm happy, I eat. When I'm sad, I eat. When I'm bored, I eat. So what can I do to change that behavior? So it really became fighting that replacement behavior for myself. And it became, okay, what is Lisa doing after work today? Or Frank and I were doing a weekend. What could we do together? And started becoming like just those little, again, sprinkling it very, very sporadically throughout. It wasn't like all in one thing. It was just a few tweaks here and there. But once the results started to come, I became, pun intended, more hungry for the success I was having. And it's funny how when you're that big, even that big, 20 pounds, like it took almost more than that for people to reckon it. Cause I remember thinking, I want, what are people going to say something to you like, wow, looks like you've lost weight. Looks like you're looking better. And when I wasn't seeing that, I was like, kind of getting like irritated and like frustrated. And it almost defeated me a little bit, but Frank was really encouraging and Lisa. And so just kind of kept plugging away at it over the years. And it took a really, really long time, a really over a year of that battle, just back and forth, back and forth. So, and to this day, I still feel like I have the battle because it's been so long. Because this is after my baby was born. Who She just turned 22 in July. Just crazy to say. But I still have my hard times of year where I tend to get very comfortable, and I recognize, okay, all right, time to pull back a little bit. And remember the journey I've been on. Remember where I came from. Again, that's why I keep that photo and those reminders too.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
so powerful of just one, you recognizing the behavior. When I'm happy, I eat. When I'm sad, I eat. When I'm bored, I eat. Of like everybody has something they go to, whether it's food, shopping, addiction. Like there's probably something for everyone. When that emotional trigger hits, we do what? Unless we recognize it. So I think that's powerful.
Absolutely. Well, and you think of like, people who struggle with substance use, or alcoholism or other things, like you don't need those things to survive in your life. You need food.
Yeah.
You have to have it. You can't not eat. So that balance was so challenging for me to figure out where is the healthy balance of what my body needs to be functionable, but also not too much. I'm also I'm a very visual person. One trick that really helped me that I found is that I went from the full size dinner plates, and I would have, like, when we would plate our food, I would put mine on more the saucers, not saucer, like teacup saucer, but that middle,
Yeah.
because for my visual, I grew up, with finish your plate, finish your plate. My mom loves to say I survived the depression, so she would just pile on the food. And the expectation that I was born with and raised with was, don't be selfish. You are very blessed to have this food in front of you. Eat every morsel of it. So I grew up kind of with those habits reinforced. So for me, I had to have that plate full, because it wouldn't feel like I was getting enough if I didn't. And so for me, it was figuring out, oh, what if I do this little tweak? And that really helped me too, in just portion size. Because for me, if someone says to me, oh, eat half a chicken breast, I'm like, girl, no, I need two chicken breasts. So I'm hungry. so,
Yeah.
um, but that was a way that worked for me too. That was one of those little tweaks I did that helps along the way.
So smart. Jeff will often make fun of me because I actually do the same thing because I'm very visual as well. And I like to have it just so I know what I'm going to eat. I have to put everything on a plate. Like I can't eat out of a bag or I don't know.
Right.
I measure everything out just so I can see it ahead of time and my brain can wrap around. But I'm a big fan of that metal size plate as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
It worked. And I mean, the struggle is too, Frank is a phenomenal cook, and he's such a good chef. He makes wonderful food. So, I mean, it's challenging to like, but also packing up after we plate. Sometimes we'll pack up the food because then I'm not tempted to go back for seconds and thirds, especially when he makes such delicious plates because he really is such a good cook.
Love that. Have you been confused about what to eat, when to eat, and overall the best things to do for your health? I've created a free guide for optimal health just for you. It'll help you live healthier, make more confident choices, and know exactly which choices you should make on food, timing of your food, and so much more. You're not going to want to miss this guide. The link to get the free guide is in the show notes. Were there struggles along the way? Can you tell me, like, once you started losing weight, did you keep losing weight or were there setbacks, struggles?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And because I think back of, this was all while we were stationed in Vandenberg. And so what was amazing to me was like the community I had there, my friend group, our military family that we had there got to be witness to that. So I constantly had kind of reinforcement of like, wow, look what you did. And then, I eventually started teaching aerobics after I did lose weight to help inspire other people. And so I became a coach. So I was teaching back in the day step aerobics
Yeah.
and body pump, which is kind of like a Les Mills type, weights and things. And so I was teaching and coaching, and that really fed me too, because to see other women that were on the same struggle that I had, like, okay, that's great. Like, I want to do that. And so I was on this great high. And then we got stationed to Montana and we went to Moundstrom. I was meeting people that just like you've only known me like this, right? And so all of a sudden there was no longer kind of that verbal praise and verbal reinforcement of like, look how far you've come. Um, and I'll be honest, I am a person who needs to hear things like that, And so that was a struggle for me because all of a sudden it was, well, you've always been this way. Like, oh, no. And so it was really challenging for me to meet people who didn't know my past. And so they didn't necessarily um, reference it, obviously, because they didn't know. And so I would get into conversations and I would be like, well, no, I completely understand that. And until I had to verbalize it, there would just be assumptions made. And that was really challenging for me because then it became, well, not really a lot of reason of that constant cheerleading that I kind of needed for myself, which is again, I should be more of a self-motivator, but I do need external motivation. I recognize it about myself. And
Yeah.
so not having that when we moved, and then as you know, moving is one of the highest stressors, right? So when we moved, it was moving a family of 5 to a city, where we had no friends and we didn't know anyone. And it was starting all over. So guess what I do when I start all over? I go to my go-to.
Yeah.
Yep. So that was a real, real bad struggle. And then it became, okay, I recognized I needed to find, excuse me, another community for myself. And I had an incredible friend named Sally. And we started going to the gym. We would do these, I don't even remember how it started. We would do 4 a.m. workouts. I mean, I don't know how I did that, Annie. I really don't. I think of that now. I'm like, I can't even get out of bed. Like 5:30 is a struggle now. How was I getting up at Montana winters at 3:34 in the morning to go to the gym? But we found a couple of airmen that were just friends, like friends of families, and we kind of had this little core group. And then a woman named Kim DeLong, who is still living there, and she was an older woman who was very much an inspiration too. And so it just became that commitment to other people. I think for me, it was too, I need someone to depend on me because if I'm showing up for you, then that means I'm going to do it. Not necessarily as much for myself, which isn't exactly the best thing I know, but if I think someone's depending on me,
Yeah.
oh man, that motivates me hugely, hugely. And so, that kind of got me out of that struggle a little bit. And then it just, I think normal life struggles when the girls were all teenagers, and going through a 14, 16, and 8-year-old. Woo-wee, that was a time. And when Frank retired from the service and we moved back here to Colorado, it was just that starting all over again. I had lost all my friends. I had lost my work people and everything. And so living a civilian life where people don't just hang outside in their front yards was foreign to me. And
Yeah.
so that's when we started looking at, what do we want to do? Where do we want to be? And I don't even remember when we found Orange Theory. It was the Academy location because you guys were going to build the Northgate one,
Mhm.
which is right by our house.
Yeah.
And we went and I remember thinking, well, we had all the equipment in the basement. I could probably do all this anyways. I mean, I don't need to go to a gym. And then Frank was the one that was really like, why don't we just give it a shot and try? And again, that community piece, that commitment piece to others, that's where we definitely fell in love with Orange Theory, which has been life changing for us because doing it as a couple too, I think it's really important for our marriage personally that
Mhm.
we call it date night on Friday nights. We do our Friday evening workouts. And then it's almost like our church is Sunday. Sunday mornings is our OTF place where we go and we celebrate together. We celebrate our health. We celebrate each other. And that has really helped overcome a lot of those struggles for sure.
I love that. And I love just that you say the community piece because one, you're both a big part of the community at our Northgate studio. And then
Mhm.
two, that was my heart behind Orange Theory. Like I always wanted to build that community. And again, I think you do it for other people. Like I needed it, but I also
Mhm.
wanted to share it.
Right, right, exactly. And, the coaches are just phenomenal in the way they, for me personally, that, when I know they're watching or they come up and like, Kelly will come up and say something about, you want to go up on that? I'm like, oh yeah, I do.
Yes.
And it's just, and it's just like when I do therapy with my clients, I always say to people, you can be as seasoned as a clinician, you can have all the certifications for all the modalities, you can be the most brilliant therapist in the world. If you don't have a relationship with your clients, it's useless. It doesn't mean anything.
Mm,
And so the relationship piece is what is so critical. And for me in my personal journey and for Frank and I in our journey together has always been, where do we feel relationship? Where do we feel connection? And we have it with each other and we have a very strong marriage. And so it's really hard to find where is that in our community, right? And so for us, it became, okay, yes, the Orange Theory reflects some of those same values we have of having that community and that commitment to yourself and to each other, and that's been phenomenal. Yeah.
if somebody's listening, and especially I feel like after COVID, because a lot of people went to work from home and they lost their community and
Mhm.
they've moved or some life event happens in which you've been in several of those. Any advice for how to rebuild or how do you start building community if you're thinking you're home all day alone and then you just don't have it?
Yeah. I think really it's embracing uncomfortable. It really
Mhm.
is leaning into being vulnerable, because in order to do that, you have to be willing to take the step into initiating something. It's not always going to knock on your door, right? It's not always going to be handed to you. And with that comes it's worth it, right? It's worth the risk, but I think it is really challenging, especially for people who might be more introverted naturally, who have lost a community. It's finding out, okay, what do I need to feel connected? And it's different for everyone. That's what's so unique about it. Is just
Yeah.
figuring out what works for you. Because if it doesn't work for you and trying to do something that works for someone else, is it's not lived, right? Frank just found me a wonderful visual he sent with me that I actually use with clients, and I love this. It's this picture, and it's got these two lines with rolling kind of hills, so to speak, and it's talking about the difference between motivation and discipline, right? Because what often I hear, especially from adolescent parents, is, "Oh, my kid's not motivated," or people with weight loss, "Oh, I'm I'm motivated. It's just too hard." Or there's all these, rationale for why we can talk ourselves out of things. And motivation always starts, as we'll see in January, when everyone gets their, New Year's resolutions, which is fantastic. That's great motivation. And motivation just starts these big hills, and then slowly we have something happen. Like maybe we have an injury, maybe we have a mood, maybe we have move, maybe we have someone leave our lives or enter our lives, or we have a life event that just can deplete that motivation. But then when we talk about discipline, it's that consistency piece, right? The wave is the same every time. It's no negotiation, no talking yourself out of things. And so that I think has been really instrumental recently for keeping us motivated too, because discipline's more important to me than motivation. I think you can get motivated for a lot of things. Being disciplined to do something, that's where the beauty is. So when you think about like how can people stay connected? Well, it's that consistency piece. Even if it's as small as like, do you brush your teeth every day? Well, yeah. Well, how do you do it? You do it every single day. How do you do that? How do you stay committed to yourself with that? How do you stay disciplined with brushing your teeth every day or putting deodorant on every day, right? Those little small things is like, if you can have a relationship with that, that just makes it even more desirable for that consistency. Because if you feel that connection with someone, it's so much easier to be disciplined. So I think for me, at least, it was finding those people too with connection. Yeah.
I've never thought of I really I'm a visual person again, and I love the wave of motivation and discipline. Like that
Mhm.
relates to me in my brain. I was like, "Oh yeah, I could totally see that."
Right. Right. I should send you the visual. I've actually drawn it on my board at work a few times. And it's really interesting to think about for yourself, like where are you motivated in your life and then where are you disciplined and what's the difference between the two.
Mhm.
Right.
I
And
like
then
that.
also asking yourself who in your life shows a lot of motivation, but then who in your life shows a lot of discipline. And we
Really
want to
good.
stay, yeah, we want to stay connected to those people that have that discipline, that consistency. because consistency is key with everything. I think consistency is so much more important than we really recognize and we give acknowledgement to for sure.
Yeah. I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of that. Like, you don't have to show up, like, if you're in Orange Theory and do 30 splat points every day, but you got to show up, however many times a week you decide. That's the key.
Yeah, that was a tough one for me with Orange Theory because I am so extrinsically motivated. So
Yeah.
for me, when I first started, I was like, if I don't get those splats or if Frank would get more splats than me, I'd be like, oh no.
Yeah.
And then I would have those moments of like full honesty. I'd be like, well, wah, wah. And then I think it was some of the coaches that really talked to me about, it's good to have green days once in a while. That's okay. And the heaviest, I always say the heaviest weight at the gym is the front door. If you're just getting yourself there and even just showing up and being present around people. Because sometimes I'll just look across and I'll see someone and you could just see that you can see the struggle. You can see how hard they're trying. That motivates me. That's like, wow, that's inspiring to see someone trying so hard. I love that. I love that. So it's like,
It
man, get it together. Come on, Kristen, do it.
totally. All you got to do is walk in the front door.
Yeah.
But yeah, good for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You've mentioned several times, Frank, and I just appreciate you guys, your relationship, seeing you as empty nesters, like all your adventures and fun, and just the love in your marriage. Tell me a little bit more about that because I think that's oftentimes, people can spend all of their time, all of their energy raising kids. They get to the stage in life of empty
Mhm.
nesters, and things can fall
Mhm.
apart. Like, how have you avoided that?
Yeah, I was talking to Frank about we often sit and we'll have conversations about that because we feel so, so very blessed and lucky. We've known each other. I just asked him before. I think it's 34 years because we met in high school. Um, I snuck in his car to sneak off campus as a freshman, and he had the car as a senior. And I think, being unselfish with each other is really always wanting to make the other person experience happiness and joy. For me too, it's always been respect above all else. And it's just prioritizing each other. Having three babies in 4 years again, like it can consume you. And I witness it sometimes in my work too, where two parents will let that triangulating start. And our girls knew from the very beginning, it's mom without mom and dad, there is no you, right? So mom and dad are going to be going on a date. So we would regularly continue to date each other. I think people forget to date after marriage, which is also another mistake. I think dating is important, right? Wanting to do things for the person, just like when you were courting them and you were like trying to impress them, like what can you do to bring that joy to their lives? And finding things that we really enjoy together is so important. And we always try to also have something to look forward to. Even now, if it's a weekend getaway of just going somewhere special up in the mountains for like a night, or it's a big trip to like Italy or Spain or traveling now. But yeah, I love, and I think, the empty nesting piece, another side to that being successful with it is we know our kids are happy. The three girls are now all in their 20s. Everyone's happy, everyone's independent, they're working hard, they're doing life. So the fact that they're happy makes it easy for us to be happy. But it's for us, it's like we get to be adolescents again. We're reliving 20 some years ago, right? Like it's that all that fun new excitement of all the things of just having our own space and being able to do things and surprising each other with things. And I am so lucky. I have the best husband in the world. I wouldn't do life without him.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love hearing that because it's like honestly inspiration of like for Jeff and I of how to do it well. And just all of the things. If you're not at that, stage in life, maybe you do have the younger kids of hearing like it's okay, you should date, you should leave your kids, and that is a good thing.
Yes, yes. And it's always the two of you first, always, 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 and respecting each other. And I think the language we use with each other really models for our kids on how to have relationships as they get older, too. That was something that was really important to us because, we've never had sons, so I don't know what that's like. But for daughters, it's like, the way Frank and I always talked about the way he treats me is the way and expectations they will have in partners someday. And so, and that goes both ways. And I always say, you know, you should treat your husband like a king, just like he should treat you like a queen. And that is exciting because when I come home from work, even to this day, and we're getting ready for our 28-year anniversary, when that garage door opens and I see his car, I'm so excited. And when he meets me there with a hug, it's like, yes, like even if we're just staying home and just watching TV tonight, I get to be with my favorite person. And how lucky am I? And it is hard to find other couples, though, I think, that have that reflection of true marriage. And that's something else about Lisa, her husband, Sleepy. They emulate what we have. And so we have stayed connected to them because of that. And that's so important, I think, to surround yourself with couples who emulate the same value system you do, right?
Yeah.
And staying away from negativity and really being around people who inspire you to be the best version of yourself, whether it's an individual or as a couple.
So important. And I
Yeah.
just think you guys both emulate what's possible and you give permission to do that, permission to like in the wallet to be excited to see each other, to cheerlead each other on, to treat each other like you were still dating.
Yeah.
So I love everything about that.
Yes, he'll find, like, when he has to travel because he travels a lot internationally for work, he'll leave little, like, notes, and I'll hide notes in his luggage. We won't even know we do it to each other, and I'll find little notes, one time I came home in a little tennis ball so that I don't push my car forward too much. There was a note hanging off the tennis ball for me to find when I got home, and it's just those it's really is the little things that just add up to the big things that make it so much nicer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Well, if we go back as we get ready to wrap up and we go back and somebody's listening thinking, you know what? I think I can do that. But they're at the very beginning. They're you on the day that the roller coaster seat had a hard time going down. Like, what do you tell that person? Like, how would you speak to them?
That's a really good question. I just think, in finding what it is for you, and it is so unique. And the comparison trap is really a dangerous one, I feel like. So just because something has worked for 10 people, it may not work for you. But where do you find that joy? Where do you find comfort and something inspiring to you? Because that's what you need to lean into. It's okay to do, I think it's important to do uncomfortable things, but also recognizing, okay, well, if I'm at this point, what is the one thing that I actually do enjoy doing? And how can I incorporate some healthy choices and behaviors to kind of start making that shift for myself? Because if we enjoy it, we're more likely to do it. And again, get that consistency, right? That non-negotiable, something we can't talk ourselves out of because we are enjoying it. And then when you get the confidence and you start to gain on top of that wave of where you do feel depleted, it's so much easier to push into the hard things when you've had those celebrations. So I think figuring it out for you, and if it's finding someone who has either walked the walk or someone in your life that you can be truly vulnerable with and say, this is where I'm at. I don't know which direction to go. I think that's important to have those people you can reach out to. And if you don't, you need to find those people. And that's being vulnerable for yourself too.
Yeah. Such good advice.
Yeah, it's hard when you're at that when you definitely are in that rock bottom or even hitting it several times of like, what do I need to get myself on top of that wave? Because it is like treading in the ocean and the waves will always be there. They'll always be there. It's figuring out what you need to stay afloat. Because we sometimes dip under and that's okay. But like, how can we get popped back up on top of that wave?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. My question I always love to end with is favorite books, like one or two books that you love or you recommend to other people.
Oh, that's a tough one. I wish I had like, I'll be honest, I read so much for my work now. The books that I read probably I tend to read a lot of books about trauma and things to help me because I love to be competent and feel confident in my work. But when I look back, I also love books that are inspiring with is it Jodi Picoult? Am I saying it right? Do you know her books, Jodi
I do
Picoult?
know her books. Yeah.
They're fiction, but I love that she writes ethical debate. Like there's always an ethical dilemma in her stories, and they're always very surprising to me. I love those kind of books. The ones that just surprise me. I've also read um, David Goggins. He's pretty intense and raw.
Yeah.
But I listened to his, I think it's You Can't Hurt Me. Because he comes from such a story of trauma. I mean, when you say his name, people who know his videos are like, oh, because he's pretty intense. But when you actually look at his story of where he came from, especially being a clinician, like I can respect and understand his trauma story and why he is the way he is. It makes sense. That was very inspiring to me. And then I'll do lighthearted things too. Like I just read silly things. So I have such a big genre of books that I wish I'd had a couple of titles. Those are only the ones I can think of offhand that, that I just enjoy. But I like when people recommend to me too. I tried doing a book club with a couple of my sister-in-laws now, and we've had a few good ones, but a few they've tried some historic ones. Those are harder for me. But again, it's everyone's interest is so different and unique. But
Exactly.
love a good ethical debate. I love a good, things that make you question and understand different perspectives. And Jody's really good at doing those ones for sure.
I haven't read one of her books for a long time, so I'm gonna have to go back and do that, and I'll link
Yes.
all that in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think her first one I read was, I think, My Sister's Keeper. And that was such a good one because it also was dealing with children and medical issues. And that was just so interesting to me. And they made a movie about it, but it's different than the book. So I don't recommend the movie as well. The book was
Okay.
much better.
That's usually how it goes.
I know, right? Oh, if only they could do it the same, but that's okay.
Well, Kristen, I know a lot of people are gonna be inspired by your journey and you sharing that. If they wanted to connect or follow you, is Facebook the best way to do that?
Sure, yeah. Messenger, I usually see those. I'm not on it as much as I used to be, but I do see some things once in a while. It's how I stay connected with extended family. So I'm on there a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to answer questions or if I can do anything to help anyone, feel free to reach out.
Okay. I'll make sure I put that in the show notes as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Annie.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining, for being vulnerable, for sharing your story. Honestly, I told you I was excited to hear it because I knew you had a story, but I didn't know all the details. So for me, this was fun and an honor to get to hear it firsthand.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And thanks for all you do with OTF. It's a phenomenal community. You and Jeff have created such a cool place. And I just don't even know what it would be like without. It's just so integral and part of our lives now. It's so part of our daily that, we just are so grateful and appreciate the opportunity to be part of that community too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
If you're listening and this resonated with you, I would just ask that you share it with somebody that you know that would love to hear Kristen's story because she tells it in such a beautiful way. And as always, it would mean the world if you gave us a 5-star review to help it spread to other people. Thanks for joining Be the Person podcast today.